All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Cassandra Crawley Mayo, who is an author, speaker, and mentor. Cassandra, how you doing?
I'm doing great this morning.
Awesome. I love to hear it. I'm
Yeah.
doing great too. Let's go ahead and jump in. That's what we like to do on the show. So if you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Okay, perfect. Well, I grew up in a segregated suburban town, as grew up as an only child, and the sky was not even the limit for me as a child. I was just very ambitious, wanted to do this. I could do anything. I had parents who did the best they could with what they knew. And I just lived my little life and enjoyed life and was waiting for the big world. And then when I got into the real world, that's when trouble started, so to speak. That's when I would say those self-imposed barriers based on probably the lenses that I started wearing based on the experiences that I had when I got out into the real world, I would say.
Okay.
And let me tell you what I like to do for fun. I love shopping.
Mm.
Just take me somewhere and just let me look and browse around. And I just enjoy that wholeheartedly. And I love learning. And those are the things that I do for fun.
Okay. And so do you have a primary form of learning or are you just open to it in all experiences in life? Like, are you a consistent reader or just always looking for stuff to learn?
I'm a reader, but I love just life period. Give me a documentary, docu-series, or let me listen to a great sermon or a speech, or just learning from. I always say that if I'm in a crowd or if I'm in a group and I know more than everybody in the group, I need to move forward and get to connect with people that know more than I do. So that's why I'm a steady learner.
I gotcha. And so tell us a little bit more about what sparked that ambition as a child. Was it just a natural thing for you? Because growing up in a segregated town, only child, that's a recipe for stamping out ambition, a lot would assume. So talk to us about that.
Well, there's a scripture that says when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I learned as a child. And then when I became an adult, I put away childish things. Now, I say that because when I became an adult, there were certain things as a child I wish I didn't put away. I just didn't have fear. I just the sky was just the limit. I thought, and maybe my parents just protected me from really what was really going on in the real world. And so I became very, very ambitious. And then there was a time in my life when the fire started going out on the ambition that I had. And that started going out based on what was going on around me because I left my parents. I started being independent, living on my own, and really getting a dose of how it really was in the real world. And that's why, I wrote this book titled Is Your Way in Your Way? And because I was an individual, I could say I was qualified to write that book because I was an individual that was always in my way. I had all these limiting beliefs. I couldn't do this. I started losing my confidence. Just so many things that were in my way. And I was determined that I was not going to go to the graveyard with my dreams unmet.
Mm. And so do you remember some of the things that started hitting you when you first got into the real world that really started knocking down that confidence? And would you be willing to share?
Absolutely. Once I graduated from college, I was relocated to Birmingham, Alabama. And based on what I heard as a child, I was a little skittish about Birmingham, Alabama. But me, I'm like, okay, I can do it. I can take on the world. I got this thing, right? I go to Birmingham and racism really, really lifted its head. And I'll give you an example. When I was looking for a place to live while there, everywhere that I liked that felt I would be more comfortable living, I was rejected. People would say, we don't have anything available. And then I would go back to a place where I wouldn't even have my dog live there. And I was like, this is going to be a problem. So I went into my to the job, told my boss places that I liked. Did he have any thoughts or ideas of what I could do to overcome this problem that I was having, not being able to find a place to live that I was comfortable with? The next day, I received a call from one of the places that had told me that they had no availability, and they told me they just had a place available. I was super excited, right? So I go to the place, get myself together, and I'm like so excited. I can't wait to see my apartment, to find out that the entire back of the community were new apartments. They were all vacant. And that's when the lining came in. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, they really did have a place, but they didn't want me to be there because I was an African American, I was a Black female. And evidently they didn't think that I could afford it, or and actually, as I think about it, they didn't even have, they had one African American person that lived in that entire development. So that was one of my first introductions to racism.
Mm. And so, what year was this? Was this the 90s, the 80s?
This was the 70, yeah, it was going into the 80s.
Going into
Absolutely, it was the 80s. It sure was.
yeah,
Yep, yep,
dang.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that will take your confidence for a swing, especially if you have. Was there like a? Did you feel naive about how racism functioned when you got into the real world, or were you expecting it and it just hit you different than you thought it would?
That's a great question. I was naive. And if I were not naive, I don't think that I would have been able to take advantage of the opportunities that I had, because I would have been tainted.
Yeah,
So of course I was naive, and I think that it was for a reason. So I was able to become the first African American female in every position that I had due to me being naive.
yeah,
And that's once I got into those positions, that's when I got slapped with the real world. Like, this stuff is really real, you know? And over time, that's when those lenses came up. And that's when I started my self-esteem. There were times when my self-esteem became low, my confidence level. Even back in the day, when I think about it, it was like imposter syndrome, like I shouldn't be here.
yeah.
I was sabotaging myself. So all of those things happen as a result that, wow, I am who I am today because of all of those things. I was able to write in my book because of all of those things. So I learned from them, and I realized that there were some problems that I had some solutions for.
Mm, there we go. Well, talk to us. So you get into the real world, you get smacked a little bit, and then as you grow in your career, you continue to get smacked, and you're like, oh wow, this stuff is really real.
Yeah.
How did you go about rebuilding some of that confidence after it tore you down a little bit?
Well, things got to a point where what I didn't share when I was growing up is that I was the grandchild of a Baptist minister.
Mm,
So I grew up in the church. And so, I went back to the church. So wherever I would go, these were the things that I would do. Wherever I would relocate to, I never knew anyone. Okay. So, and I'm also an introvert. So in order for me to get myself more engaged in a community, I had to be an extrovert at times. For example, I would always find a church, look for different churches. Shopping, as I indicated, was fun. Like, where were all the boutiques? Where were the good doctors? Where were the grocery stores? Where were the hospitals? So, in order to find that out, I would ask people. I would ask people. And another thing is my hairstylist. If I saw somebody where I liked their hair, their style, I would say, well, where do you go get your, I'm new in town. Where do you go get your hair done?
yeah.
Or, yeah, I'm new in town. Could you tell me about any churches? And then it got to a point where I wasn't new anymore, but I would still use that line. And people that I met says, Cassandra, you have been here for 2 years. You are no longer new in town. But that was my line. And that's actually how I met people, and the people that I met were great people. They were good people. And it's kind of like association brings about assimilation. So I was with individuals, I built those relationships that are never underestimate the value of relationships. And I believe that the individuals that I was with lifted me up. You know, they were like me. Even me going to church and my faith, I'm a woman of faith. And those are the things that built my confidence, those two things right there.
Mm. So going back to your faith and then being around a community of people that could lift you up.
That's right. And
Okay.
not knowing they could lift me up, they just did,
Yeah.
you know, because they were like-minded people.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about because it looked like you climbed pretty high in your career. Tell us, take us through that process a bit more.
Well, you know, I think I climbed because number one, there was affirmative action, right? We all
Mm.
know about that,
Yeah.
particularly in these days. And I got a job. Now this is interesting. I interviewed for a job at a major hotel as a general manager. And this guy interviewed me, and I just patiently waited to see whether I'd be offered this opportunity. I had no hotel experience, right? But I had management experience. And one night, about 10 p.m. at night, I received a phone call from the human resources director offering me this job to be a general manager at the Courtyard Marriott Hotel.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, yeah, I'll take it right away. Like, sure, I'll take it. And the first thing he said is, thank goodness I've met my quota.
Uh,
And when he said that, I thought about it, but being naive, I didn't put a lot of thought to it. Right.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So when I finally go in, do my onboarding and everything, I realize that I'm the only Black female general manager at that hotel. So over time, the naiveness that I had, it kind of dissipated because then not only did I get that role, but all of a sudden I have guests that are angry. And when guests are angry, they either wanted to go see Mr. Marriott, which was so funny to me. Like, I'm going to see Mr. Marriott, I'm going to write him a letter, or they wanted to see the general manager. And that's when the general manager walks out of her office and people looked at me like deer and I had with headlights on, like, oh, and I had one woman said, no wonder the hotel is not managed effectively. And she walked away. And I said to myself, wow, this is some real stuff. Because of the color of my skin, she made that assumption that the hotel wasn't run effectively because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
So so I had to just get put on my big girl pants and just say, wow, so this is what it's going to be like. But let me tell you, what I did by the grace of God is I performed very well. And that did it right there. So I got awards because I performed well. And more importantly, I paved the way for other people, for other Black people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so your book is called Is Your Way in Your Way?
Yes.
And is it just going through your life and talking about how you were, kind of in your own way with these limiting beliefs, or is there more to the book?
Well, it's a self-discovery guide for women on
Okay.
how to restore yourself, learn from experience, and be your true self again. So to answer your question, a lot of the book is my story. It's my story. However, I kind of talk about the story that you read about me, it's going to be you're going to read about yourself. There's really a lot of things in that book that you can, even as a man, can identify with. I say that because men have read the book. Men have challenged me, well, why would you write a book for women? I'm like, because I'm a woman and I'm qualified to write this book because these are the challenges that I had. So I talk their love letters to women. It's like, dear women, welcome to the real world. I kind of talk about my story, how I overcame them, or dear women with low self-esteem, or dear women with racism, who's dealt with racism and inequality. So all of these things, even health, mental health, physical, all of those things are just things that we as women and even people have experienced and how you can overcome them. It continues to be a work in progress, but yet it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. What was your motivation for writing the book? What really gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Well, I was in my way because I've been wanting to write a book for 15 years. I had this book in my heart and in my head, but I could never do it because of these limiting beliefs. Like, who would read my book? And then I didn't want to be exposed, right? I didn't want
Yeah.
people to know my story, and then finally, when you have this dream and you have this passion, if it's real, it will not get out of your spirit. It'll stick with you continuously. And you'll be like, wow, okay, I'm going to write this book. Okay, I'm going to write this. And then you tell a friend, so the
Hmm.
friend can hold you accountable. I still didn't write the book, right? Then I'm like, okay, well, I told my parents. They're like, okay, so people somewhat doubt it. And then I'm like, I'm going to show you, I'm going to write this book. And then during COVID, that's when I sat down and finally wrote the book. And I tell you this, Tim, what's interesting is after I wrote the book, I says, I'm done. This is it. I finally did it. Yay. And then all of a sudden something said, it's not over yet.
Mm,
You cannot write the book and don't tell about it. You cannot write the book and don't do anything with it. So now I have turned my book into a business.
mm, I like it.
So yeah, that's
That's
what I've
amazing.
done.
And so is the business helping women kind of rediscover themselves like the book does, and it's just a more in-depth side of things? Is it just selling the book and that's the only product? Tell us a little bit more.
No, well, I have a 90-minute workshop on designing your best life to help women design their best life. And then I have a mentoring program, a one-on-one mentoring program, a journey to living your best life mentoring program to help women to define, because this is the deal. We all there's even as a child, people have dreams. You have a dream. It's something you're ambitious. You want to do something, but it's something that you get so stuck with. You're just stuck and you can't move forward. So what I do is empower women to mitigate any of those self-imposed barriers that's preventing them from living their best life. And if I ask the question from a scale of 1 to 10, where are you on a scale of living your best life? People kind of hesitate. People don't tell me the truth. People really think about it. And people, so you want to it'd be great if you could, you're not here just to be here. You're here for a reason.
Yep.
So when you're living your best life, you have more meaning. You're ready to get up in the morning and tackle this thing because you are actually tapping into what you were ordained to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the 90 minutes kind of helps them get some clarity, and then is the one-on-one for like the process of it all.
Exactly. You're really good. Yeah. The one-on-one is to execute it.
Hmm.
So during the design process, we design it, we talk about it, they think about it, we talk about their values. And then once they define, and what I do is they create a vision board. And this is the vision, this is where I want to go, this is what I look like. But then they need help, they need support to help them to carry out that vision. And that's the mentoring program.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into your dreams and goals for it. What's your vision for your book and what's your vision for the business and life?
Yeah. Well, I have a vision board, and my vision is to empower a generation of women, to get the exposure, to share with them, because I think what I'm doing is a problem. It's a problem that people aren't living to their full true potential. That's a problem for me. So therefore, I have the solution. So with that solution, and like I said before, I'm qualified because I was that person. It took me forever to write this book.
Yeah.
Now, if I didn't write the book, I wouldn't have the workshops. If I didn't have that, then I wouldn't have the mentoring program. So if I can support and empower women to pivot and start living the life they were born to live,
Mhm.
hey, my work is done.
There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
There we go. So empower a generation of women to live to their full potential. Is that where we want to keep it, or are there some other dreams and goals that you want to chat about?
Well, I think my next book will be Breaking Barriers to Reach Your True Potential. That'll be my next book. And then I will just see where God leads me next.
There we go. And it was
Yeah.
breaking barriers to. Can you say the title of it one more time? The next book.
Oh yeah, to reach your true potential.
Yep. Reach your.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Well, what are the top 1 to 2 skills that you feel you need to develop right now to make this dream life come true?
Mhm. Well, one of them is I need to continue to network. I just need to build relationships. I need to get that exposure, I would say, so that people are aware of what it is that I want to do. The other skill, I would say, and I currently have, but I can always enhance it, is to continue to be authentic.
Yeah.
That's when the real conversations start, when you are authentic. And then the other one is to make sure that what I do is for the best interest of humanity,
Mm.
of the things that I like to do and continue to do.
So talk to us a little bit about networking. What does networking for exposure look like to you? Because for some, it's professional business conferences. For others, it's hosting events. For even more people, it's maybe dinners at their house weekly. Talk to us about what
Yeah.
networking is for you.
Yeah. Networking is a combination of all of those things. There are a lot of empowering women um, um, events that happen, and I definitely attend those. I do like to go places. I like concerts and I like conferences. I enjoy going to those because that's where I meet people as well. And also by the result of the people and relationships that I've had the opportunity to be on television twice, on local news, things of that
Yep.
nature. So I would say my big vision, my dream is to be like on Tamron Hall, talking about this book and what my goals and dreams and my aspirations are for other women. And I know from there I will continue to have more, but I have to take those little steps at a time.
Okay. I gotcha. So a little bit of all those things and just taking steps towards that direction of like always getting in front of more eyeballs, whether it be in a one-on-one fashion or a media fashion.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Or, I'm also a speaker, so even speaking at events,
Yeah,
church events, conferences, women conferences as well, to get that exposure.
for sure. And authenticity, how do you go about prioritizing that in your life? Are you pretty, does it come automatically to you right now, or is it something you have to work on
No,
consistently?
it does come, I can't, for me, I have what I call a spirit of discernment. I can sometimes tell whether it's time to open up or not, with that individual because we mirror who we are, and if I'm not feeling comfortable, then it's not that I'm not authentic. I just won't be as authentic,
Yeah,
depending on, it's kind of like you heard people say, well, I got a testimony. Let me tell you what happened. Well, it kind of depends on who it is
yeah.
and what's going on in the situation, that I'm in. And I just, I love another thing I love having deep conversations.
Hmm.
Just and that's when I say you can't really have them unless you're authentic. That's when the real conversations occur. And people today, they want that. They want the realness. They want the real you. They want to see themselves in someone else. Like they're not the only ones that's going through whatever they're going through. We all are. You just don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that you said it's not inauthentic. It's just don't give your pearls to pigs, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
uh-huh.
Exactly right.
So, do you have any go-to questions? So, when you decide that there's somebody you want to be authentic with, do you have some go-to questions to start to spark that authentic conversation to start to dive a little deeper? Or is it just a natural process where you start asking them about their story and then it unravels?
I one of the things in my corporate job, I traveled 90% of the time.
Mhm.
And not just driving, I flew. I was always on an airplane, right? I used to tell people my office is at the airport. And it's interesting, and I talk about this in my book. There were people that would automatically open up to me. I would hear your life story. I would have people crying, laughing, telling me stuff that I'm like, why are they telling me this? And I said, probably because they think they'll never see me again. So
Yeah.
they just tell me everything. And then I had a woman says, you know what? I have a therapist. And just due to this conversation right here, I'd like to hire you. And I don't even know you. So I just think it's natural,
Yeah.
and you have to be somewhat approachable,
Mhm.
and people just feel comfortable just telling you. I have friends that say, why did they tell you that? I'm like, I don't know, but I must have seemed to have a trust factor or something where people just felt comfortable sharing. And then I would just give advice or what my thoughts were about it. Not that I know it all, but this was my opinion. And that's when I realized I've been through a lot of things, not for just myself, but for others as well.
Mm. There we go. I think it's that attitude that makes you so approachable. I've been through this for others. A
Yeah.
willingness to serve, a willingness to love that just kind of comes through in all that you do.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, what are the highest impact daily actions that are going to tick the needle forward towards your dreams and goals?
The highest impact.
Highest impact daily action. So if you were going to, if there was only one to two things every day you could do to make sure that you empower a generation of women to live to their full potential, what would those one to two actions every day be?
Well, one is to be approachable, to
Mm,
be authentic, and another thing is just to get out there into the world. Don't, a lot of people, it's this thing about people want to work from home.
yep.
And I used to work from home because I traveled a lot, and that's good. But there's some pros and cons with that. It's just good to get out and be amongst people, because you can get so into your head, into yourself when you're by yourself. And we're not created to be alone.
Yeah.
So I just, I believe in just getting out there, getting amongst people. And I think because I relocated a lot and I went to places that I knew no one. It forced me to talk. My husband used to say, now look, we're going here and I don't want you to say anything. I'm like, well, why not? Because I engage people, I ask questions, and I enjoy doing that. I mean, that's how you kind of get to know people. So those were I think the two things, the authenticity and just getting out there and getting from behind my desk and getting out into the world. And I meet a lot of people when I go shopping too, if I'm out and about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
are do you stop random people in the stores and just strike up conversations still with the I'm new here?
I don't do the I'm new here, but if someone has something on that I like,
Hmm.
I will compliment them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a natural for me. Like, wow, I like that, and I've had people where I can tell that they weren't having a good day, and I didn't do it because they weren't having a good day, but I changed their aura when I approached him and said, "You look really nice today," and I can vividly remember this lady that looked like she was like, "Oh, thank you so much," like she really needed to hear that,
Yeah.
and I meant it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, cool. What character trait do you most need to develop right now to make your dream life come true?
Hmm. Um, the character trait is to not take on other people's burdens. You
Mm,
know, um, if people are down, and I've been there before, I can, be there for them, but I don't want to immerse myself into that because it could bring me down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sympathize, I empathize with them, but and that's when I said, at one time I used to want to be an anesthesiologist, right?
Hmm.
And now I know why I wasn't, because if something happened or if I were a doctor and I had a patient that wasn't doing well, I would just take it to heart
Yeah.
and it would just mess me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would just mess me up.
Yeah. I feel like that's a strength and a weakness, right? Because when you care about taking on other people's burdens, like Bible talks about bearing one another's burdens, right?
Yeah.
But it's also like don't get to the point where you're bearing one another's burdens alone almost, and you have to be able to like rely on God in the midst of that. And sometimes if you get too deep into the weeds of suffering, it can divert your focus. And so if you're getting too intense into
Mm-hmm.
all the burdens of the world or too focused on all the sin of the world, you can start to miss stuff, or you can start to ruminate on the wrong things. You know, you're not
Mm.
ruminating on God, you're ruminating on some of the misery and the results of sin. And yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. That's when he says, let the dead bury the dead.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
taking on other people's burdens and really immersing yourself and having the skill and the character trait not to do that, I agree. That's a solid one. If it's something where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really empathetic, I'm really sympathetic, but sometimes I go too far. Not
Yeah.
too far. It's,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's the first time I've ever gotten that one. So
Oh, okay. See how you connect with people?
uh-huh. I love it.
Podcasts are great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
agree.
a great connection.
Hmm. Well, if there were one or two people you could meet right now, and this could be a specific person or a type of person, and they'd really help you take that next step towards your dreams and goals, who would this person be and how would they help you?
Um, there's a person I would love to meet, have met, but they've passed on. But I want to talk about that.
Hmm.
Um, I heard a minister by the name of Dr. Miles Monroe, and Dr. Monroe played an integral part in me reading the entire Bible. I was so infatuated with his leadership, his stance, what he stood for, that I was just engulfed in it. I was so engulfed that I'm like, I went to the Bahamas so that I could meet him. I never had the opportunity. I met his sister, but it was just something about him that I could just be in his presence and he could feed me, you
Yeah.
know. So that's one person that I would have loved. And I even tried. I even went away to the Bahamas so I could meet him, but I never did meet him. The other person is I'd like to meet. Hmm. I mm, that's a tough one. The I would like to meet I would like to meet Tamron Hall. And the reason that I would like to meet her because of what she had gone through when she was on television and how they put, I can't remember the lady's name, they put in her place, and then they did a counter offer to Tamron about, well, why don't you do this show? And she refused. She's like, I'm not, no, no. So she stood ground on what she believed in, and then look where she is now, just to sit down and have that conversation with her. And that's probably why I'm looking forward to being on her show.
Mm.
I'm putting it out there.
There we go. Hey, you'll get there. You will
Yeah,
get there.
I'm putting it out there.
Well, cool. So Dr. Miles Monroe, who died so young, he was
Yes,
60,
he did. Yeah,
60,
yeah,
Tamron Hall.
yeah.
All right, now we got our thriving three. So the first question is, what's your favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one of the three.
My movie, Shawshank Redemption.
That is a fairly common one on the
Yeah, I love that movie. That movie, that message was either get busy living or get busy dying.
yep.
Yeah, and that's what I really like that movie.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh, you got to see it.
I know every time somebody comes on, they're like, "Yeah, Shawshank Redemption, Shawshank Redemption." I'm like, "Yeah, I really need to go watch that movie."
Yeah, that's just another sign for you.
hmm
Yeah, you need to take a look at it. Then your expectations are way up there, and you may say, "Oh, it was all right."
Yeah, exactly.
So you won't feel the same way we feel because your expectations are off the roof, up on the roof, and off the roof.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's one way you like to take care of yourself?
Um, I like to get away. I like to get away where, like I just got back not that long ago. I went to Montego Bay just to kind of get away, get by the water, read, meet people. Oh my gosh, I just love that. That is just so amazing to me. I like to go to the all-inclusive places, and that's what I love. I love that.
There we go. You say you're an introvert, but you really like to meet people.
I do, but I'm definitely an introvert.
Yeah, no, I like to meet people too. Like I love
Yeah.
having these conversations about dreams and goals and getting into the meat and potatoes with people, but
Right.
I'm also very introverted.
Yeah. Yeah. And people are surprised, like, are you really? I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah. Once I'm in a crowd and I come home, I have to decompress and like, oh, I'm so glad to be by myself.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Get a book and
And that's
you
the
know,
thing. That's the thing. All people need people, but introverts just recharge
yeah,
alone, and extroverts recharge with people. And
exactly.
I'm like, I could love being with people, but it's just exhausting to me, and then I need to
It
go
is.
somewhere.
It just wears me out.
Yeah.
Like when my girlfriends want to go places, I'm like, well, who's going? So such and such, such and such, such. I'm like, nah, I don't want to go with all those women.
Yep.
I just don't want to be around all those women.
hmm
And I love them all, but I don't want to be around them.
Yep.
They drain me.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Well,
Yeah.
what is one action step you can take right now or continue to take if you're already doing it to get on the Tamron Hall show?
What action step
An
am
action
I going
step.
to take to do that?
Yep.
That's a work in process. I'm working on it. I am there are a couple of um radio shows I want to be on. Like I listen to, I'm not sure if you're familiar, it's called Urban View. I really like Urban View with um, that if I could get on, I want to get on their show because they have like Women Wednesday, and for some reason their names are which is I can't believe I can't remember their names. Um, and just let people know like yourself, put it out there, this is what I like. Also, to connect with the producers, and then in order to do that, relationships, it's just like the TV shows that I was on. It was somebody that knew me, that knew someone that knew producers.
Yep.
So I just believe that when the student's ready, when I'm really ready, that's when the teacher's going to appear.
Yeah.
I gotta be ready. So I'm figuring, well, I'm not ready yet, but I am. I'm getting there. And podcasts are very helpful as well. It gets me to not get not only the exposure, but it just gives me more visibility, which is exposure. But I learn from each and every one. I learn from you. The questions that you ask. You ask great questions, and we'll see. And once I do, I'm gonna send you a little note and say, "Hey, guess what? I'm on Tamron Hall on such and such a day." And like
Yeah.
people are like, why not Sherry Shepherd? Or well, that she's work, she'll work too, but I just have to have a goal,
Uh,
to get there. That's all.
yeah. No, I got you. I'll be looking forward to getting that note.
Yes. Oh, and this is the person, Karen Hunter.
Hmm.
is the person that's on Urban View. She's excellent. I would love to get on her show just to kind of talk about my book and what my aspirations are. And Heather B is the other person
Who's also on Urban View, or
on
she?
Urban View.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so we got our final section of the podcast now. It's all about beliefs. The first question is, what is one limiting belief that continues to pop up in your life, if any?
Um, One is what I say doesn't make sense.
Mm,
It's confidence. I have the confidence, but it's kind of like, so when I get off the show, I'll say, okay, now I should have said it like this, or even the podcast that I do some solo podcasts, and I'm like, that didn't make sense. Just questioning my ability
yeah,
is one. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And that keeps me humble though.
for sure, for sure. Where do you think it comes from? Just growing up, just living life, just
Um, Growing up, I think our childhood has a lot to do with our adulthood. I talk about that in my book as well.
yeah,
I grew up with a mom who was very critical. She loved me dearly, but she criticized everything I did. So when that happens, then this perfection thing can't comes out. And now that I understand where it comes from, I'm okay with it. I feel better about it. I
yeah,
get it. So it's just that's a limiting belief for me.
yeah. Do you have any limiting actions or inactions that reinforce that doubt in yourself, that question of what I say doesn't make sense?
Yes. One is self-sabotage. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is I will work on something. I used to teach Sunday school, right? And I would have to study all day long. Like, okay, now I got to do this. Everything has to be just perfect, or if I do my podcast, my solo I gotta, sure, you have to prepare, but my goodness, I have to prepare 8 hours a day? I just, I'm just how much more, you know, I'm trying to remember this and verbatim this and that. And that's the thing, the action that I need to stop it, trust that I have what I need to move forward and stop studying and studying and studying. It's just like prior to coming on to your podcast, I made sure I read about you.
Mhm.
Now, okay, now am I going to read about him all night long? Or
Uh-huh.
what am I going to do here? So that's the thing that I need to just trust and believe that I got this.
Yeah,
Just be myself and just be natural.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I think it was Gary Vee. This is the first time I heard this, but he was talking about how all those perfectionists out there, it's really just insecurity disguised as perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
because you would be more okay with failing if you didn't have to be so perfect all the time. And so it's really
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah, you're telling yourself that you just want it to be great. And there's a part of you that does want it to be great.
Yeah,
But it's like, why do you want it to be great? You can probably track
right.
it back to an insecurity.
Exactly.
So
That's true. That's right.
yeah,
That's
no,
love.
it's
Hmm.
something that I noticed, like a big part of this podcast. I don't, to this day, I mean, this is like episode 600, probably 18 or something like that.
Wow.
And I still don't do a ton of editing. Eventually, once it starts producing some revenue, and um, I'll hire some people to do some editing and to kind of up the show production.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about starting a podcast, and the goal of the podcast was for me to be a more consistent person in my own view,
Mm.
and then to prioritize having conversations. I love talking to people about their dreams and goals.
Hmm.
And the one thing stopping me from doing the show was the editing. I was like, there's no way I'm going to consistently edit a show. I just won't do it because I hate
Yeah. Yeah.
editing. It just
Yeah.
bothers me. I'm not gonna spend my time doing it. And then I was like, okay, just don't edit. Like,
Right.
if the goal is consistency and the goal is to have conversations you love, go have the conversations you love and just post them for people to hear. And if there's a glitch here or a glitch there and there's a 2 minute pause, yeah, you can clip that out, no problem. But you're not going to be taking out every
Right.
extra sigh, extra breath.
Right. Yes.
Um, so yeah, I just don't edit a ton, and I post the
Yeah.
podcast, and it's it was getting over that. I want this to be perfect.
Yes.
I want to take this to the world, and
Yeah.
yeah, just doing it for me. So
That's right. And just so you'll know, I never would know that you never edited. I would think maybe you did because they just flow.
yes, yes, that's the thing. They do just flow, and
Just flow.
people were always talking about how they spend so many hours editing their weekly podcasts, and I'm like, there's no way I'd be able to push out the content I push out if I'm editing. And
Yeah.
in my mind, they don't sound too different. I think there
Yeah.
are some differences where, like, you do hear the ums, the ahs, the filler words. Like some people will clip those out, they'll make the conversation flow smoother, but it's like a 5 to 10% increase, which is a valuable one. But
Yeah.
just that 5 to 10% isn't valuable enough to cancel out the 90% that would
Right.
happen from just being consistent.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was my perspective on it. Done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
Done is
So
better.
time consuming.
It is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Mm-mm.
Well, if you were to change that limiting belief into an abundant phrase that really spoke to your heart in the way that you needed to hear it, what would that phrase be for you?
um, Trust and believe.
Trust and believe. I love
Yeah,
it. And
that's
when the
it.
limiting beliefs start to take over, what thoughts or actions do you resort to in order to take back control?
Now ask that question. What's that question again now?
When the
What?
limiting beliefs start to take over, so when you start to say, what I
Yeah.
say doesn't make sense, you start to doubt yourself. What thoughts or actions do you resort to in order to take back control, refocus on abundance and truth?
Well, it's like the mindset. It's like the sky is not even the limit.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me if we didn't have those limiting beliefs. How would things be? You know, um, it's kind of like I say it like this. Let's say I had a week to live, then what?
Yeah.
So if I can think of it like that, then hey, as long as it's ethical, moral, legal, let's do it.
Yeah. I like it because we talk about the limiting beliefs, and I think a lot of us don't even realize how much they influence us. Like when I ask that question, what actions or inactions reinforce this limiting belief?
Mhm.
The inactions part is really important because our beliefs are like a filter we have on the world, and there are things that we don't even consider as possible
Mhm.
simply because of the beliefs that we have. And so, so many questions we don't ask people, so many rooms we don't try to put ourselves in, so many um, activities we never give the light of day simply because we have a limiting belief around our life that is like guiding our vision. And so we're just blind to it.
That's true.
Yeah, because it really is like if you went and asked 1,000 people to really help you out with your business and you just did that every day, you did that
Right.
every day for a year, right? And yeah, you're going to probably get 10,000 no's before you get a yes. But
Yeah.
if you don't have any limiting beliefs, those 10,000 no's aren't going to like affect you. Because you're like, well,
Oh, well,
the world has 8 billion people.
that's
It
right.
makes sense that 10,000 aren't really interested in helping me. Let me go to the next one.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's something I realized with like cold calling and sales and
Yeah.
business, and
Yeah.
the world is just so big. And then
It is.
you take one person's response or five people's responses and you make it everybody's response. And then you start projecting beliefs out there that just aren't reality.
Right.
Yeah. A big one for me was growing up, it was really hard uh, for my parents to spend money on like candy and stuff at the store. And so every
Yeah.
time I asked for some Reese's or for some Skittles, they'd be like, "Do you have Skittles money?"
Right.
And so then I would be like, "Okay, so it must be like painful to spend money. Like the goal
Yeah.
is not to spend money, right?"
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
hurt me in sales because I would project that belief on other people. So I would have the belief
Mhm.
that it's painful to spend money. So then I'd be like, if it's painful for me to spend money, it must be painful for that person to spend money. And
Yeah.
then if it's painful for them to spend money and I'm selling them something that
Exactly.
costs money, I must be causing them pain. and I'm a good person. I don't want to cause people pain. So then I didn't want to sell people things because I was like,
Yeah.
they're not going to enjoy it. It's just going to be painful for them.
Right. And that's something.
Yeah. And then I sat there, and when I looped that whole story in my head, I was like, that just doesn't make much sense because people spend money on things that they
Oh,
want to buy.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's not painful for the majority of people. And some people, they don't have money, and bills
Mhm.
can be really painful. But
Yeah,
for the majority of people, honestly, even for the people who are living paycheck to paycheck, still spend money on stuff they want to spend money on.
exactly. And
They'll
go in debt. Right.
yeah, they'll
That's
get
right.
some debt to buy a new pair of shoes or
Exactly.
something.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, I just when I finally realized that belief was there, I was like, it's just not accurate. And I've been projecting that onto people
Right.
for so long. So anyway,
Yeah, you reframed it. And that's why I say it's so important to understand where does it come from.
hmm
And then it could make sense like, oh, okay. 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 Yeah,
yeah,
that's critical. And that's why they say therapy is good too. So they help you, not your friends doing the being the therapist, but a real professional to
yeah,
kind of help you get away from that. Because if not, that'll stick with you forever.
absolutely.
Yeah. And you'll be right
Definitely.
where you were when you started. I mean, so yeah,
Yep.
that's good. That was good about the Skittles. But and I bet you still maybe buy them today, right?
Oh yeah, I don't. Anytime my wife is like, "Hey, should we buy this? Can I buy this?" I'm like, "Yeah, you got it. Like money is not a scarce thing. We got this. Like,
Right.
let's go and do it."
Exactly. Exactly. That's great.
Yeah.
That was a great story.
All right, last question for you here. What is your favorite belief about yourself?
My favorite belief,
hmm
I have a sense of humor.
There we go. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Cassandra, that is all
Potential.
we
Yeah.
got for you. Is there anything else you want to chat about before we sign off?
No, just to say I enjoyed this conversation that we had,
Yeah, me too.
and I admire your consistency.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
that says a lot, and I may send you a box of Skittles.
There we go. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Well, if people are wanting to contact you, what's the best place?
Well, I can be contacted on all Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Cassandra Crawley, Mayo. And my email is mayo@cassandracrawley.com. I encourage your listeners to look at my website. I have what you call a true potential quiz where you can define and find out what is your potential. Are you a trailblazer? Are you a seeker? Are you an overcomer? Or are you an intentional liver?
Hmm,
And it'll actually tell you all about yourself. What are your strengths and your weaknesses and things that you need to overcome?
there we go. Well, if you
Yeah.
guys are listening to this and you loved what Cassandra had to say, you like the idea of that, what was it called again?
It's called the True Potential Quiz.
If you like the idea of the True Potential Quiz, make sure to check her out, check the quiz out. All the links to do so will be down in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.